So recently there was a podcast, a YouTube video, an episode put out by PJF Performance. He had Jake Tuura on for a podcast interview. And this interview was all about tendon issues, tendon injuries. And then there's a specific clip within that video that I'm going to have a response to today of. And it's in respects to Achilles ruptures, Achilles tears. Now, before I get into this actual episode, I want to say that I generally like the information that both PJF Performance puts out as well as Jake Tuura. I think both of them are great guys. I've never met them personally. This is just my opinion on the subject matter. But I do believe that the majority of the stuff that they put out is useful information. This is just a particular aspect of some of that information that I highly disagree with. So here's the video. I'm going to put this up.
Oh, you can even just look it up on ESPN, like what games did they miss leading up to that? And it's always like ankle, calf. It's always something, and then it happens, and everybody is on social media like, yeah, look at the biomechanics. You got to avoid this position. It's like, no, avoid the calf strain or rehab the calf and then get back into basketball.
If you followed my channel for any period of time, you probably can guess what I'm going to say. Glances over biomechanics. He thinks that people who are into biomechanics, understand biomechanics, just are going to nitpick over every single circumstance that goes on and find every single little instance that is wrong. And he thinks there's very little utility for it. Essentially, I don't know how long this episode was, but it was, a very quick glance over the importance of biomechanics. Well, and it was a focus on external factors, such as somebody was in pain at that current moment in time. Someone was dealing with a tendinopathy at that point in time. Well, does it stand to reason that a tendinopathy can develop because they do the same poor biomechanic maneuver day in and day out, over and over again? Is that a potential reason why they could develop a tendonitis? Absolutely. Do I think biomechanics are the only factor? Absolutely not. The things they mentioned in their episode as far as workload monitoring, going from periods of inactivity to high periods of activity, overloading a tendon, underloading a tendon, not keeping high exposure of the type of activity that tendon's going to be doing over and over again. These things are all important. They all matter. It's what they talked about in the episode. But to literally glance over biomechanics, I just don't understand it. And here's the thing with most strength coaches out there. They think that people who, like myself, who focus on biomechanics, spend a lot of time teaching someone how to move. They think that I don't train somebody as aggressively as what they do. They think that I nitpick over every little thing. And if the person's not having picture perfect technique, I don't load somebody or I don't advance somebody. And then they put that in a general bucket for everything as it is biomechanics, and then they start hating biomechanics themselves because there's other people out there who, to their point, will focus on picture perfect technique. They'll get obsessed with picture perfect movement or what they think is picture perfect movement, and they won't advance an exercise, and they won't challenge an athlete, or they won't pay attention to these other factors. There's many factors that involve why someone has a rupture. It's not just one thing. But again, to totally discredit biomechanics, it's a total disservice to the industry. It's a total disservice to our athletes, and I'm clearly against it. So what should you be doing differently if you're working with athletes and you're trying to help better avoid Achilles ruptures? Achilles ruptures is at an all-time high. Here's some statistics right here. Look at this right here. There's more Achilles ruptures this year than there's been at any point in time in the NFL's history. And we aren't even through the full season. To PJF Performance and Jake Tuura's point, most of the time you'll see these injuries happen in week 1, 2, or 3 because people are just getting back into activity and they haven't, put high amounts of force into the ground very recently. So a lot of time these injuries, as it relates to the NFL, happen early on. NBA season's a little bit longer. There's a lot more games that are being played, so it's a little bit different. You'll see some that happen later in the year, but they're becoming more and more prevalent. Yet at the same time, we have more and more strength coaches intervening. We have more and more rehab professionals interviewing. The budget of these professional teams are seemingly unlimited of what resources they have to help their athletes to better health. Yet injuries are at an all-time high. Ruptures are at an all-time high. So what gives? Well, the thing that's missing is nobody's paying attention to the biomechanics when it's just clear as day right in front of them. So here's the Achilles mechanism of injury. The heel will drop and the knee will straighten. If you're putting force in the ground and you're trying to move forward, your heel should lift up and your knee should be bent on the moment of impact, and then it will straighten as the heel lifts up. But more importantly, the heel moves forward and the knee moves forward. If you're trying to move forward, your heel should move forward and the knee should move forward. And your heel should never drop when you are trying to move forward. Yes, that even means when you are standing still and you take a step backwards to go forward, that foot should hit the ground on the ball of the foot, heel should remain still, and because your body is transitioning forward, that heel should lift forward and that knee should move forward. Inevitably, somebody's going to say, yo, Greg, what's the research on that? Well, here's the research. I've watched hundreds of Achilles injuries happen. They're all on tape. Just go YouTube Achilles ruptures. You can watch as many as you want. They all will have the same mechanism of injury. Heel drops down and the knee extends when they're trying to move forward. So, if the mechanism is that clear, do we really need any more research than that? It's pretty evident. Furthermore, do we have an alternative strategy? Yes, I've just mentioned that. You plant your foot into the ground, that heel holds steady, the knee is bent, and as you move forward, the heel moves forward, it lifts up and moves forward just as the knee moves forward. The knee might straighten, but your heel should be lifting up and moving forward during that moment in time. Find me an Achilles rupture that happens when you get those correct mechanics. You won't find one. You know how I know? Because I've tried. If you find one, drop it in the comments below, send me a link to it. I'd love to see it. It isn't out there. This is why Achilles ruptures happen. There's a ballistic stretch to the gastroc, to the calf. Sure, there's other factors that led up to this situation, but it's the amount of exposure to you having this position in addition to those other factors that ultimately leads to the rupture. If you could avoid this position altogether, teach your athletes to move differently, we'll show that in just a moment, then you can avoid that rupture. All right, so we're going to take it frame by frame here and really understand what's going on. So the first one here is done correctly. So anytime you're doing an acceleration, a start, a drill with your athlete where they're trying to move forward, they're going to first take a plyo step backwards. And when you take that plyo step backwards, you should see the ball of the foot being pressurized, the heel up off the ground, the knee is bent. And then as they move their body forward, that's when the knee will extend, but the heel should be lifting up and moving forward with the waist, with the knee, with the body moving forward. The second slide here is the reverse of that, and you can even try this yourself. It just feels super awkward to let your heel drop down and the knee straighten as you're trying to put pressure through the foot. This is usually accentuated when somebody turns their foot out. So the more you turn your foot out, the easier it is for you to put pressure through the heel, versus if you keep your foot straight ahead, the more awkward it will feel. So this is another reason why you want to make sure when you plant backwards that you plant with your foot straight ahead so that you pressurize the ball of the foot and not too much through the heel. And then finally, you can see this be extrapolated into many different things, such as a wide receiver coming off the line, somebody doing a sprint start, a quarterback dropping back but then taking off to run. This concept can be applied to any acceleration drill. You just have to know what you're looking for so you can teach it with your athletes.